Legislation is law which has been promulgated by a legislature or other governing body, or the process of making it. Before an item of legislation becomes law, it may be known as a bill, and may be broadly referred to as legislation, while it remains under consideration to distinguish it from other business. Legislation can have many purposes: to regulate, to authorize, to prescribe, to provide, to sanction, to grant, to declare, or to restrict. It may be contrasted with a non-legislative act which is adopted by an executive or administrative body under the authority of a legislative act. For implementing a legislative act under the Westminster system, an item of primary legislation is known as an Act of Parliament. After enactment, legislation is usually proposed by a member of the legislature, or by the executive, whereupon it is debated by members of the legislature and is often amended before passage. Most large legislatures enact only a small fraction of the bills proposed in a given session. Whether a given bill will be proposed on is generally a matter of the legislative priorities of government. Legislation is regarded as one of the three main functions of government, which are often distinguished under the doctrine of the separation of powers. Those who have the formal power to create legislation are known as legislators. A judicial branch of government will have the formal power to interpret legislation. The executive branch of government can act only within the powers and limits set by the law. Latest revision. The function and procedures are primarily the responsibility of the legislature. However, there are situations where legislation is made by other bodies or means, such as when constitutional law or secondary legislation is enacted. Such other forms of law-making include referendums, such as the Scottish independence referendum, orders in council, or regulations. The term legislation is sometimes used to include these situations, or the term primary legislation may be used to exclude these other forms. Dead letter. The phrase dead letter refers to legislation that has not been revoked, but that has become inapplicable or obsolete, or is no longer enforced.